Welcome to Timber&Terra. I'm Glenn, and it is fall, late October, which means it's time to start the boiler up. You can hear the rain on the tin roof, I'm guessing. So I have annual cleaning that I do. I have taken the liberty of sort of cleaning off some of the creosote that's formed around the door so I can get in here without making a mess. And I scraped down all the ash, and this is number 6 as far as years, sixth year of using this boiler, and the bottom of this looks brand new. I probably will at some point have to replace this refractory in the center. That's like fire brick, where the actual hot gases and flame go down into the reaction chamber, is what central boiler calls it. But primarily what I do here is take off this shroud here and this one here, and if you look on the back side, this shroud here that has the holes. Now that's where the primary air goes. The primary air is what burns the material in the chamber where the firewood is. The secondary air comes through this tube here, this square opening. It's called the charge tube, and that's here. These holes point downward into that refractory opening, which is where the gases that were driven off by the fire in here ignite, and that's what causes that real clean hot fire in the reaction chamber down below. So we'll get to all that when we start it up. But what I've noticed here is the front part of this stays relatively clean, but the back part, there are two holes. There are two holes for the primary air to come out. Those always get plugged up. What I tried last year is, because the fan is right behind here for the primary air, and I thought a lot of that air was sort of short-circuiting, just coming out here instead of going down this chamber. So I blocked off this hole here, but I may block off another hole and try it this year, because what I'd really like is for more of the air to go in the back. The other thing is, when I'm actually burning it, is the material in the back doesn't burn quite as quickly as the material in the front. But for now, I'm going to clean off this so I can access these acorn bolts, or acorn nuts. There are just 2 of them that hold on the sides, and 3 of them that hold on the front. So this front piece has to come off before the side pieces do, because the side pieces sort of get tucked in there. The acorn bolts have been removed. They actually come out quite easily. It doesn't really get it that hot in here, I guess. There's no temperature probe in here, but maybe 400 or 500 degrees at the most. The temperature really occurs down in the chamber below. So it's always a little bit of a mystery as to the best way to take this out. Seems like I have to relearn it every year. There we go. Slide the little corner. So this is the hole for the primary air, the hole for the secondary air. There's a single fan that I'll show you in a bit, and has dampers that either admit air to one or the other. Most of the time it's both. Primary air only until the temperature probe in the reaction chamber gets up to a certain temperature, and then the secondary air kicks in. Before I lose these washers, I'm going to take them off. So you can see this buildup. I mean, it's not that, it doesn't stick on here, but I do clean it off every year. This doesn't get clogged up too much. But again, again just to make sure it's clear and you get as much free-flowing air. See, that was blocked quite a bit, much more so than this one, which would probably explain why, well, to your back, that corner seemed to be more covered with creosote than that corner was, because there wasn't as much air getting in there. Alright, now these things here have to come off. These are just, their intent is just to keep the wood off the side of the boiler so that air can go around and burn better. If you could even see that. I can't tell what you can see. There's not a lot of room in here. This one here, sometimes they come out easy, sometimes not so easy. This is just a piece of thin metal that sort of wedges itself in there when you put it in, and then just secure it by those two bolts with acorn nuts on them. But along the edge here there'll be some creosote that sometimes makes this a bit of a challenge to remove. Down. I often have to rebend these. Either they have distorted themselves from heat during the heating season, or I bend them taking them out, but they're not that bad to pound back into shape. You can see here the buildup of creosote towards the back end. The first time I did this, I think the boiler had run for 2 full years. It was a 3rd year, and this opening was probably maybe a quarter to a third filled up with creosote. Maybe more, I can't remember, but so I started doing it once a year. So now it's just a matter of cleaning that out. So I'll come back to you when I have the other side out. And I've cleaned it all up. So before I clean out the other side, just wanted to give you a look at it. Actually back here is not quite as bad as I thought it would be. It is probably a third full from this mounting bolt back of creosote. The other thing I did is chipped off some of the stuff here, cleaned around that access opening, but I was able to see in here, this is the top of the heat exchanger. Looks like there are 2-3 birds in there. And there looks to be one way back in there. I'm not sure I would be able to see these from the stovepipe opening, the clean out straight ahead, but I can see it here. Poor guy. nest here or what? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. 8 birds in there. Oh my goodness. And then one way in there. I'll show you the cap that I have. Normally, folks run these without a cap. And you're supposed to put a 5-gallon bucket over there, primarily for rain, I think, to prevent rain from getting in. But I guess it would also prevent birds from getting in. Well, I gotta figure out something to do. I don't want this to be a bird graveyard. Alright, well, let's clean this up. So this is the blower unit. There's a single blower over here. It sort of sucks in some louvers, some vents in there. Goes through the blower, comes out this hole here, and sort of pressurizes this chamber. There's gaskets around here, so when this door is shut, it's sealed. Pressurizes this chamber, and then these are little stepper motors that will raise this flap. This top one goes to the primary air. The bottom one goes to the secondary air. The only thing you need to do to take these off is there's hose clamps, because they're round. Take the hose clamps off and we can remove those valves. There's a fair amount of room in here to get around. Having a 5/16 nut driver for hose clamps is a whole lot better than trying to use a screwdriver. Comes off easily. I'm sure you're not supposed to let it dangle by the wires, but they're rather light. Just got to remember that this one goes to the upper right. So now it's easier to see. This is the round hole that we see from the inside. That's the primary air. There's a little bit of buildup there. I'll clean that out. And this is a round hole on the fan side, but then it transitions to that square opening we saw on the other side. That fits this, they call the charge tube, where the secondary air comes through those holes there and points downward. So this all looks fine. I'll clean that out. I'll vacuum these little bits of creosote out and put it back together. So with the stepper motor and valves back in, just make sure they both open freely as far as not stuck, and it's all cleaned out. Now we can put the shrouds or the tin sheets back in to make the air channels. So this shield is the one that goes to the back, and I forgot I had done this. I had welded a little piece of flat stock there to try to, this is the sort of center of the circle, the pipe that the primary air blows in, to try to separate one side to the other. I remember plugging this up and I ended up drilling a hole into it. I don't remember why. So the only other hole here is this one. This here is for the mounting bolt. I don't want to block all this off, even though air can come around here and go up there. I think I'll just leave it the way it is, run it for another year and see what happens. This has a little bit of a bow to it, but not enough to prevent reinstalling it. This is a bit heavier gauge metal than these. This one, I bent this taking it out, and they always come out with a little bit of a twist or a bend. To some extent, you can bend it back when you install it and it'll set in there just fine, but I am going to bend that back a bit more. This one's not too bad. This lip here has to be bent back, and then put it in my vise and straighten it out a bit. One thing you don't want to forget is these washers, because these washers sort of, one on the inside, one on the outside, sort of sandwich the sheet metal. Almost as much of a trick putting them back in as it is taking them out. have to put them in at an angle and then twist them. This is a dead blow hammer. It works well for this type of application. Dead blow hammer just has sand in it so that it doesn't bounce. All the energy sort of goes into whatever you're hitting. Washer on the outside, and an acorn nut. Acorn nut is just one that the end is closed off. It's good for this application because the threads don't get banged up, they don't get exposed to the heat, they don't get exposed to any crud getting on the threads, preventing them from being unscrewed. Tighten them up. I'll do the other side and then we'll come back when I put the front piece on. So this front piece, the side ones are mounted the same way, but it's actually a carriage bolt with a nut, and that carriage bolt, the square piece of the carriage bolt, sort of fits in that square slot. The side ones is generally no issue with knocking them out, but these, two reasons. One is I had to remove them so I could get this piece out, and messing around in here, they're just more exposed to be bumped off and losing them in the creosote. Same thing with the washer on the back. The top piece sort of goes up under this lip and these side lips, so they have to go in first. Tappy tap. Now this is bent enough. It's hard to tell. Am I going to have enough threads to get those on? It might be a challenge with the washers on, but I can tighten down this center one. That might help. There, just barely get that one started. This one here, I can probably push it enough. I hope. Don't really have any leverage to. There we go. Maybe just enough. Just trying to catch a thread or two. That might have done it. Nope. Alright. Come on, work with me. That feels better. Alright. So that little flat piece was right here where the air hits it, and my thought was to try to force air to go both ways rather than, for whatever reason, favoring this side. It didn't look too bad compared to other years. It still seems to be something that wants to favor this left-hand side as I'm looking at it. Right-hand side as you're looking at it. So I'm going to leave the creosote in here. Creosote has a lot of energy in it. It burns. For those of you who have had chimney fires, you know how well it burns. I'll put the charge tube back in. So that has a little dowel that fits there right in front of the camera. You can't see it. It's there. So that's what it looks like from the door. The charge tube in, creosote there, that bypass door sort of cleaned out, and I have to hang those pieces of angle iron on the side. They just hang there. And the wood rests against them. That was the ash that I pushed through the hole before I started doing the work up in there. So I'm going to put some of the ash back up in there. It's good for insulation and retains heat so that it cycles as it should when it needs to start up again. And the rest of it, as much as I can fit, I'll put in this barrel that I neglected to empty at the end of the year, at the end of the season. So I'm not going to have room for all of it, but that's fine. So when the rain calms down, I'll take this out back and dump it. So I'll leave this in here for now. It's not a big deal. In fact, some of the chunks of charcoal or sort of unburnt embers will burn up down here. So now, before we can start it, let's go to the other side. I have at least one bird to get, and we'll see what the heat exchanger looks like. Poor guy. Gosh, I feel bad. This little bit of stuff that'll collect in here, I just scrape out. This little scraper that has a radius about the same as the pipe, and you can see all the way through to the side we were just in. It doesn't look too bad. I was cleaning this weekly. It doesn't really get that built up. But setting, and I think allowing it to cool down, actually allows some of the creosote to flake off. It doesn't normally come off when it's hot. Yeah, you can see some of the, hopefully you can see some of the flakes here of creosote that separated from the stainless steel wall. Alright, we'll get this cleaned up, I'll remove that little bit of ash down there, and then we'll be ready to start it. So you can see the rain cap on top right there. A little bit of a torturous path for birds to get in. I don't know if they're barn swallows or what. Maybe they look for those small openings to build nests in. I'll have to figure something out. Either just put a big bucket over the top of it, or maybe take it down and line it with screen or something, but I'm afraid the screen will plug up enough and reduce my draft. So I don't lack for kindling, particularly this year for whatever reason. I think I had some old wood I cut, lots of bark. The bark isn't best, I don't think, for kindling because it tends to pack together. But this will work well. These are basically all pieces from splitting. You always get some splinters and stuff, so we save those. I have a bid box here. I probably don't even go through half of it during a normal year because I don't normally have to restart it, but maybe once or twice in the year if we're gone away for a long period of time, I mess up and something goes out when it shouldn't have. I'm sure my face is a mess, so pardon me. So I'm going to dump most of that in there. When I was piling wood, I'm still not quite done. I have about 1.5 cords left to pile. I threw out some smaller pieces that I'll also put in here to start things. So unlike a traditional fire where air normally comes from underneath and then up through, the air for burning is the primary air, which will come through those holes in the side and the holes from the back. So it's actually more important to have kindling sort of along where those holes are, not so much in the middle. So you can see in here there's two zones. This larger circulator is for the house, which has I think 5 different zones, including hot water. This smaller one just goes to the garage. There we go, push and hold, I guess. So 52, that's the temperature probably of both the water and the reaction chamber, which is where the secondary air is. So this one here is ignition air. So if you press this, what that does is that you can see the fan's going and the primary is fully open. The red means fully open, blue means it's partially open. Normally when you open the door so that you don't have fire blowback, it shuts this air off. So you can feel air coming out of these holes. But that's important to get it going, to have that air. That's why that button's there. That tiny little fire going. I'll add some more kindling on top. And just putting some bigger pieces of dry stuff in there, as well as some pieces of bark. So I'm going to shut the door, let this burn down for a bit, get a nice, some hot coals going, and then I'll put some more larger pieces of wood in. And until things get going, you need to leave that bypass door open. That allows the fire to burn more conventionally and just go up through the stack. You're not going to be able to see any smoke out there. There is a little bit of smoke coming out. But underneath here, we won't really see much, if anything, until that trap door is shut. That forces the air down. So we'll come back when things are going a bit better. So it's been about 20 minutes or so. I did take a poker and mix around the kindling and add a little bit more. This is the water temperature, which started out at 52 degrees. Now it says 73. So just from the heat that surrounds the upper firebox, gained a fair amount of temperature. So I do have some larger pieces here. It actually happens to be softwood, which works out perfectly, but I didn't really plan it that way. This time of year there's not a lot of heat load, so open it up, see what it looks like, and add some bigger pieces. So I'll let that burn for a bit, still with the bypass open, and make sure we have a really good hot bed of coals, get the bigger pieces at least ignited a little bit, and then we'll shut the bypass, and that'll force the fire down and see if we can't get that gasification to occur. Well, it's only been another 5 minutes since we put the big pieces of wood in. You can see the water temperature now is up to 83. That reaction chamber temperature is already up to 438. That fan will kick in at it's either 450 or 550, I can't remember which, the secondary air. But I think we're ready to try it. Hopefully you can see that dark gray, blackish smoke, which is ripe for being burnt. So we're looking for the secondary air, which is that indication. It'll either come on at 450 or 550. It's 550. But now that we're forcing all that air to go through that opening where the tile was, that refractory tile, into the reaction chamber, that is going to heat that sensor up rapidly. So this should get to 550 pretty quickly. And then what should happen is that black smoke will slowly go away as it actually starts to burn. Well, it seems to be stuck at 522, so I'm guessing I really haven't given it enough time for that coal bed to ignite, or the coal bed to establish itself. So I'm going to open the bypass back up and let the fire get going a bit more. Boy, it seems like that should take off. Well, I see a problem. I have the bypass shut again, and this cycles between the water temperature 87 and what now it's saying the reaction temperature is 32. So I'm thinking I have a failed probe. That has never happened before, but I figured it was one of those items that would be nice to have a spare. So thankfully I did buy a spare, and it goes right in here, so hopefully there's not much to replace it. That's right there, and just a clip in there. So what I'm going to do now is just shut the power off and go get the probe. So this is the new probe. I hope it's just the probe and not something with the computer. Little zip tie holding that there. Here's the old one. They look the same. It has a bunch of putty around it. So I guess I will do the same treatment. Let's see if that made a difference. Oh yeah, press and hold, press and hold. That looks better, 105. So 92 is the water temperature. With the handle down, it cycles automatically between the two. With the handle up, it'll show the temperature with pressing that button there, so 162. For some reason that light's on. Normally it's not on unless the handle's down. Interesting. So we'll get a chance for the fire to get going again, and then we'll shut that bypass door and see if it operates as it should. So the reaction chamber temperature says it's 723, more than enough for the secondary air to burn. There is some grayish smoke, but not nearly as black as it was. So let's put the handle down, see what happens. So at 750, that should go red, which is fully open. There it is. And I hear the rumble, and the smoke has turned clear. You can, I don't know if you can hear the rumble. We'll look at the fire here in a bit, but the rumble is basically that fire burning in the reaction chamber, 829. Well, there it is. So it'll burn up any of the unburnt embers. Obviously you can see some, must be driving off a little bit of moisture maybe that was in the ashes. Normally, during normal operations, the secondary temperature, the reaction chamber temperature, will get up to at least 1200, sometimes up to 1400 degrees. Right now it's 990, almost 1000. Well, there is still some light smoke there. I'm guessing there was just a lot of smoke from the way it was started up and burning, probably more so than can be ignited with the air that it's given. So that should settle out over 1000 degrees now. So we'll let things run for a bit, and then we'll come back. So the water temperature is now 94, and the reaction chamber temperature is darn close to 1400. So with a lot of heat now going through the heat exchanger in the back, I'm going to plug the circulator in, a larger one, and that'll circulate it through the house heat exchanger and back, but also in the tank here to make sure the heat that's going to the water by the heat exchanger is circulated everywhere. I'm not sure it'll do much to that temperature. It might drop it momentarily before it heads back up again. So I'll see if the flame looks any different down here in the... Oh yeah, nice and hot. So you can see just on the other side of the flame, that probe, somewhere right there, is the one that we just replaced. So you can see the fire is hitting it pretty hard. And that's what that 1400 degrees is measuring. Water temperature is now up to 108, and the reaction chamber temperature is still holding at just under 1200 degrees, but there is no smoke at all, so it looks like we've reached steady state as far as the fire goes. It's producing as much smoke as it can burn, so all is good. That is a typical fire, typical flame pattern, you know, just throughout the year. That's what I normally see, is sort of a narrow one. That first one that we saw, I think, represented just way too much smoke. It was not able to burn it all. So I'll mix that up to make sure that those black unburnt coals are burning just like those orange glowing ones are now. So let's go in the house, and I'll show you the heat exchanger and how I connect it into the boiler. So these are the two pipes that come from, that's the arrow, and going back to the boiler. It is warm to the touch, so we do have flow. A couple drain valves if I ever needed them. Here's an aquastat that I have. What that does is that basically allows the oil boiler, which is a backup in the wintertime, to turn on when this temperature gets below, I think, 145. So above 145, the oil burner is prevented from starting up, and it basically forces all the heat in the house to come from the outdoor wood boiler. That is a plate heat exchanger. I think it's rated for maybe 500,000 BTUs an hour. It's the biggest one that I could get. I just didn't want to have any issues with it being undersized. I'll go around to the other side and we'll talk about the pressurized boiler portion of it. This is actually unpressurized. It's just atmospheric pressure. So this is the pressurized side. You can see the stainless steel flexible pipes there, also 1.25 inches. So this runs, you know, typical home hot water baseboard heating, runs about 15 psi. But what I do is it is connected to the infeed side, so all these zones here feed in this way, and right now I have that valve shut, so that prevents the water from going through the heat exchanger, and this valve open, so it just goes directly into the oil boiler. So then what I do in the wintertime is I open this valve and shut this. So now what happens is when there's a zone calling, right now they're a none calling, no heat, no hot water. When the return comes in from whatever is being called, say first floor baseboard, and it'll come and go through that heat exchanger, get heated up, and come out here and then into the boiler. So it sort of acts as if the water in the boiler is hot enough, and then just goes to the zones, if that makes any sense. I did research that. It's better to have it on the inlet side rather than the outlet side. It might be more important if you didn't have that aquastat that I just mentioned, because it could be that the boiler doesn't see that it's up to temperature if you have the heat exchanger on the outfeed side, because the water coming back will be cooler and the oil boiler might still fire. But here, feeding that heat into the system on the inlet side, if you didn't have that aquastat that I put in, then that would basically tell the boiler, okay, I'm up to temperature, I don't need to fire, as long as it's maintained the heat from the outdoor wood boiler. If that makes sense, hopefully it does. A lot of gibberish. I'll do one more look out at the boiler and we'll wrap it up. So water temperature's up to 118. We've dropped the reaction chamber down to just over 1,000 degrees. I'm guessing the flame looks about the same, maybe a touch smaller. So all the smoke and flames you just saw in there now will be forced to go down, be fed some additional air, combust better. That probably won't change much. In fact, it may even go down just soon after I put some fresh wood in. Anyhow, that'll basically wrap it up. We're at 120. I run this at 185 in the warmer temperatures, say spring and fall. I'll run it at 190 as the set point temperature. In colder weather, because when it does shut off, it overshoots a little bit. So at 185, when it shuts off, if there's nothing calling in the house, the temperature may rise up to 190 or slightly more. So I don't want to set the temperature too high and have it like do a high temperature shutdown or something like that. So that'll wrap this one up. I did do a review of this, a 50-year review on my channel. I'll put a link to that in the description below. I went over not only the boiler and how it operates, but more the woodshed itself, sort of lessons learned, what I might do differently if I built this woodshed again. But thanks for watching this one. I appreciate it. Thank you.